What is going on, everybody? Kyle Murray from FTN Daily, back again with the Optimal, presented by FTN Network. We're here on a Friday. Fridays are always a fun time for the show. We're going to do some lineup building stuff for NFL, and we're going to go through the projected popular plays, take a look at where the ownership is falling for Week 10 of the NFL. I do think there is some chalk that we want to talk about for this slate and for this week, but it's going to be important to kind of dissect all that stuff as we go. So, couple of things I want to touch on before. Last night, we almost went back to back with the NBA optimizer. Kyle Lowry came through with a last second layup to knock me off of the first place spot in the $9 FanDuel contest once again after winning it 2 nights ago. Last second layup knocked me down. Got caught by a 7-man train, lost by 0.8, went from first place for 10K down to 8th place for $125. So that was fun, but overall, can't complain after the win 2 nights ago. But anyway, that was what happened in NBA. I was going to review the 3-game slate and talk a little bit about that, but it was a 3-game slate, and we have the NFL slate to talk about. And I think I would rather talk about tonight's NBA slate if we have time at the end in terms of a first look. But we're going to do what we always do on a Friday. Go through each position, talk about the most popular plays using the optimizer at FTN Daily, and talk about the viability of some of the chalk and all that stuff, and maybe how that can work with the lineup building. And then we'll talk about building some lineups using the optimizer. And then at the end, if we have time prior to 2:45, 3 o'clock, we will do some NBA Friday first look, which is what we always like to do on a Friday. So Friday's always a great day. If you're watching this on YouTube or Twitch, hopefully it should be back up and running on YouTube. I thought it was good yesterday, but apparently I was trying to stream it to the wrong account, so that wasn't working properly. So hopefully it is all good and ready to go on YouTube. I am seeing it live on YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to throw a comment in there just so I know that it's working and you guys are able to see me. But once again, appreciate you all for tuning in. As always, really appreciate the support. If you're watching this on Twitter, feel free to throw this a retweet, share this video, share this stream. Really means a lot. Appreciate that. And then if you're on YouTube, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. We're working on getting the subscribers up over there so we can push out some more free content and get going with more free content for all sports, really, not just NBA, not just NFL, but free content across the board, not only DFS, but also betting. The more subscribers we get on the YouTube side of things, the more free content we can do, which is what we would love to do for you guys. So appreciate you tuning in. Let's get right into it. Let's run the intro.
Every day, DFS players set out in search of the perfect lineup.
Great Scott!
To help you craft the best lineup in the land, FTN's Kyle Murray is here to take you through one of the most powerful tools in the DFS world.
That's what I do. I drink and I know things.
It's The Optimal with Kyle Murray.
As always, shout out to our guy Tom for working up that intro for me. Really appreciate it. But I wanted to shout out last night because the optimizer has been working really well for me. So if you guys are looking to get involved in the NBA streets, I do think that using the optimizer, MMEing in NBA, for me personally, I think it does get a little bit more complicated with sports like MLB and NFL. But I think for NBA, a lot of times it's a bit easier in terms of if you wanted to kind of simplify some things. So if you're looking to learn on how to use an optimizer or looking to learn how to MME or just get comfortable with that situation, I think NBA is a great place to start. So I would highly recommend that. Looks like we do have a comment. Glad to have you back on YouTube. All right, cool. Glad to hear that it's working. Appreciate you tuning in, Brandon. I'm expecting that wide receiver call today at some point, but glad that it's working back on YouTube. Again, sorry about that the last couple of days where this hasn't been up on YouTube, but good to know that we're back and settled in. Let's pull up the optimizer here. Take a look at the I have the NBA optimizer pulled up, but let me change that real quick. All right. NFL optimizer. Apparently I have to log in. There's my email in case anyone wants to send me an email, I guess. All right. Let's take a look at the main slate. First, I guess, if you guys want to, we can talk about last night. My goodness, that was the worst slate. That was the worst game I've ever seen, I think. I had more fun enjoying the Cleveland and Denver Thursday night game. That was absolutely brutal. In terms of some of the news things that we got on the NFL side of things, a lot of people a lot of people probably know this by now. If you followed me anywhere, no matter where I've been the past couple of years, or just on Twitter, you know I'm a massive Odell Beckham stan. So we got some news. He's going to the Rams, and Cam Newton returning to Carolina, coming full circle. That has to feel good for him, right? Like they let him go. They struggled last year a little bit. They bring in Sam Darnold. Oh, things are going to be totally different. And then Carolina needs Cam Newton back. I mean, that has to feel good for Cam, right? But either way, I do think that a couple of interesting pieces of news there early on in the week, I guess middle of the week there. So that could shape some things. Probably not this week. Odell might play on Monday night, but obviously not on the main slate, so it doesn't really affect us here today. But things just to keep in mind going forward throughout the course of the year. Brandon. We're on the same page here. Overlooked by many, and we're going to regret it. I'm not overlooking Terry McLaurin. I actually have some things to say about that game and Terry himself. I love that call. I liked Devontae Smith call last week, and I liked the Terry McLaurin call this week. I didn't quite get behind the Tyler Lockett call as much as I probably would have liked to, but I do like the Terry McScorin. I will say I don't love the nickname McScorin. I do tend to side with Scary Terry. That's my favorite one anyway. Yeah, but I love the call. Love the call. All right, let's hop into it. Taking a look at the projected popular plays, let's head over to the quarterback position. Keep in mind, we have some projections still in flux here. I do have guys like Wilson and Aaron Rodgers projected in. I'm pretty sure I have Aaron Rodgers projected in. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers projected in, even though he's still listed out right now. It does look like he has a really good chance to play. It sounds like from him, like he was talking about it on the Pat McAfee show, which if you guys haven't watched, that's been highly, highly entertaining the past couple of times he's been on. But he talked about it as if he sounds like he's going to play this week. He's very optimistic. So I don't think he would lie about that. I'm not saying that he's absolutely going to play because of that comment, but I am expecting him to play, or at least right now in terms of trying to project who's going to play, I am assuming he has better than 50% chance to play. Russell Wilson, it sounds like he's also going to play. Pete Carroll said that they don't have to put him on the injury report because he's still on the IR. Technically, he's on the IR designated to return. He hasn't been officially activated, so they don't need to list him as any kind of participant on the injury report. But Pete Carroll actually came out and said that if he were to have practiced, he would have been a full participant on Thursday, which is actually kind of interesting. I didn't think he would say that. Most of the time, coaches are trying to hide that kind of stuff, so that was kind of interesting. But all right, at the top in terms of projected popularity and projected ownership, Dak Prescott, he's under 7K. He gets a great matchup against Atlanta. 22nd against the quarterback so far in fantasy this year, but they are 30th in pass DVOA, 15% projected ownership. Josh Allen also very popular. I believe the Jets are 27th in pass DVOA, but they've had some success against quarterbacks. I don't know if that's because they've been able to shut them down, or if it's more so that anybody can kind of get the job done against the Jets. So maybe just the running backs are doing it a bit more right now. But Josh Allen, I think, is a great play nonetheless. He's under 8K. He makes a ton of sense. I don't think that we have to worry about them continuing to struggle. I still think they're one of the best offenses in football. Last week was sort of a fluke, and I don't think that they're going to take any opponent or any matchup lightly. So it could be a great get-right spot for Buffalo. Herbert also projecting to be popular. He was pretty overlooked last week, and he had a pretty solid game. And this week, it looks like people aren't going to be overlooking him. 11% projected ownership, but not too concerned with any ownership at quarterback. Just want to point it out in terms of kind of getting a feel for where some of these stacks are. Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan both being in the top 5 is pretty interesting. I didn't think Matt Ryan would have this much projected ownership, but I do think it is probably one of the better games of the week to target. Next up, Tom Brady. I think this ownership is so exciting. He's my favorite quarterback of the week. Tom Brady is. Absolutely love him at this kind of popularity, and especially once we get some news. If Godwin's healthy and he plays, I think that's a bump for Tom Brady, obviously. But if Godwin doesn't play, I don't think that makes Brady a worse play. I think it actually potentially makes the stack better because you're then narrowing down where targets can go and actually adding some value to players. So I actually think Godwin sitting would make the stack better. Gronk and Antonio Brown were officially ruled out today, so that's always interesting in terms of taking two of the big names out there. So even if Godwin does play, you're typically looking at Evans and Godwin as being like the top two guys, and then maybe Tyler Johnson as a value option. But overall, really love Tom Brady this week, and that kind of goes hand in hand with how much I like Scary Terry McLaurin. Kirk Cousins is projecting for about 5%, as is Big Ben, Jalen Hurts, Taylor Heineke, Russell Wilson. They kind of start falling off as we go down the list here. Russell Wilson is cheap, 6,700. So I think he would be fine if he plays, and that's someone you guys are interested in, but not a guy I'm necessarily dying to play. I think there are a couple other good options, and like Dak being in that same kind of tier is probably where I would prefer to go. But that's it for quarterbacks. If you guys have anybody that you want to comment on or bring up, feel free to show a comment. And unfortunately, I'm not able to watch the Twitter stream live right now. I'm trying to, but my phone is. So I'm actually setting up my new. I got a new phone, and I'm setting up right now. So the old one is actually just not working because it's syncing with my new one, and it's taking much longer than I anticipated. So unfortunately, unable to follow along with the Twitter comments right now. But if you are watching this on YouTube or Twitch, feel free to throw a comment on the screen, and I will pull those up there. But all right, let's see here. Sorry about that. Trying to see if I can get the Twitter stream pulled up, but no luck. All right, running backs. D'Ernest Johnson, Najee Harris, Cordell Patterson, all about 20% or more. D'Ernest Johnson, I think that ownership will actually probably creep up a bit more once we get official news on Nick Chubb. We've seen a couple reports recently that Nick Chubb could potentially play here. The way that I read the quote from the offensive coordinator is he has a chance, and that's been the quote that's kind of been circulating around the industry, and that's maybe what people are kind of holding on to. But if you read deeper into the comments and deeper into the interview, he says he has a chance, but then he went on to say, I'm not sure how large that chance is, but there's a chance. So that sounds pretty pessimistic to me. I think there is a chance he does play just because of the fact that he tested positive on Monday and he has the vaccine, so he can, have a quicker turnaround to get in there. But yeah, I think it's definitely something to monitor. If Chubb is out, D'Ernest Johnson is definitely in play as the chalk du jour of the week, and I think he would be pretty tough to ignore. If Mike White is starting, shouldn't we all be higher on someone like Michael Carter? Potentially, yeah. I don't hate that. Don't love the matchup, but if he's going to get 9 catches again, I don't hate that at all. Najee Harris is my favorite running back of the week. He's projecting as one of the better point per dollar plays amongst running backs. He's projecting as the second best point per dollar running back play on the board, despite being the 5th most expensive. And there's another unique player just like that over at the wide receiver position. So it's a very unique week where we have 2 elite plays that are really cheap and providing a ton of value, even though they're expensive. So Najee Harris is someone I'm going to be playing a lot. I have no problem with the ownership. I'll probably try to double the field. I just think he's a smash play. I think the big issue with Najee Harris so far this year has been efficiency stuff. Not really necessarily averaging a ton of yards per carry, but in a matchup against Detroit, I think this is a great spot to turn around and get some efficiency. And now you consider the fact that Claypool's out, Juju's still out. Ebron is going to be back this week, but he was dealing with some injury stuff. Deontay Freiermuth and Najee Harris the 3 main guys in his offense now, and Najee's going to get a ton of work here. So he is questionable, so we'll have to monitor that. Obviously, he could sit, and that would change a ton, but make sure you're following up on that news. But if he plays, I really like him, and if he doesn't play, Kalen Ballage, I think, would be a really strong value option. But Cordell Patterson, Eckler, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette rounding out the top 6 in terms of projected ownership. Eckler and Zeke are great plays. I actually thought Zeke would be more popular this week. Last week, he was super popular, 26, 27% projected ownership come the end of, I guess, the week, or I guess the start of the games, right? Lock. And he was $7K, same price in a matchup against Denver. He got hurt last week, and he didn't return to the game. And then I guess we've got some optimistic reports from Zeke saying that he feels like he's going to be good to go and he's going to play. So maybe that's why the ownership's down, because of the injury news. But I assumed it would be higher than it was last week. I mean, this Atlanta team, I believe they're 27th or 28th in rushing DVOA, and they haven't been able to stop anybody, and Zeke's still 7K is the same price. So I was a little bit confused to see Zeke being less popular this week than last week when he's definitely 100% a better play this week. The only reason that might change is because of the injury, but I don't think they're going to roll him out there if he's hurt, right? If he sits, Tony Pollard is, all systems go there. But Dalvin Cook, Jonathan Taylor, James Conner are the next three. I think Cook and Taylor are both very strong plays. Kind of tough to decide between both of them. I will say Jonathan Taylor, he hasn't had massive involvement in the passing game over the course of his career, but he's actually had more involvement this year than Dalvin Cook has recently. So no problem with going Taylor over Cook in the better matchup there. Although Dalvin Cook, the Chargers are 28th in DVP against the run, but this is kind of part of the reason why some of the DVP stuff can be skewed at times. I think it was probably because of the Baltimore Ravens week where we had 3 running backs account for a rushing touchdown. So those kinds of weeks are really going to kill a team, and it's going to hurt their DVP. But when you look at it, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 30th in rush DVOA, and that's definitely a more proper number to look at. But let's see. James Conner is probably the one chalk that I'm considering fading here. The main issue with me is that if he doesn't score, what does his outlook look like? And obviously it's tough to say because he's scored in a lot of the games so far this year. I think 11 or 12 touchdowns, and he scored obviously 3 last week. So when he's scoring as frequently as he has been, it's tough to say, oh, well, what kind of play is he if he doesn't score? But that's kind of important to look at in terms of popularity, right? Like the price shot up, obviously, for good reason, right? Chase Edmonds is out. But with that price shooting up, people are maybe assuming that James Conner has all this value or he's, a much better play because Edmonds is out. But with the price going up $2,000 essentially from early on in the year, that accounts for Edmonds being out, right? So now with this price being up, if that's already accounting for his potential new role, which could potentially not even really change a whole lot. I mean, I'm sure he'll get some more targets and I'm sure he'll get a couple more carries, but I think last week with Colt McCoy in there, I think we saw an optimal outcome with 20 plus carries and 5 targets. Benjamin had a rushing touchdown last week, so I think they'll mix him in. So if his role is being accounted for change with the price change, but the ownership is going up, I don't know if I love that. If he was still 4 or 5 and the ownership was going up, that would make sense. But with the price change and the ownership rising, I don't know if I'm in love with that. And if he doesn't score, I'm not really overly concerned about being burned by Conner. I just don't think he's like sure, we did see 5 catches from him last week. And again, I think that was a really solid outcome for him. But let's say he racks up 3 catches for 35 yards and 65 rushing yards. So we're looking at 13, 14 points. So I'm not really concerned with that beating me. Sure, 13, 14 is whatever. But at potential chalk, he's probably the fade that I'm willing to fade so far this week. Aaron Jones, I like a pretty good amount. DeAndre Swift, I don't really like that much this week. Devin Singletary, we're going to have to monitor the news there. Zach Moss is in the concussion protocol. If he sits, I think Singletary is a very, very good play. Potentially an even better play than D'Ernest Johnson. Christian McCaffrey is down here at 5%. Michael Carter, who Brandon just touched on, is at 6%. I think he's pretty interesting as a pivot as well. His prices also continue to rise up, 5,600. And we've seen Ty Johnson get more involved in the passing game as well, which I don't love. But even 2 games ago when Michael Carter had, the 9 catches for 95 yards, Ty Johnson still had like 4 or 5 catches in that receiving touchdown. So I don't know if Ty Johnson absolutely kills Michael Carter's value, but him being there and being more involved in the passing game is definitely not fun. All right, wide receivers. Let's check out the most popular plays. All right, Davante Adams, he was the guy I was referring to in terms of him being the best point per dollar wide receiver right now, despite being he's the most expensive wide receiver and the best point per dollar play. If Aaron Rodgers plays, I will be playing as much Davante Adams as I possibly can. That's just kind of it's that simple for me. I think it's the no-brain play of the week. I mean, he's the best point per dollar play amongst every wide receiver, despite being the most expensive one. I know it'll be popular, but I just don't see any pivots here that are as good of a play as him. I think he's an absolute smash play, and he'll definitely be my most popular. Well, I probably shouldn't say he'll be my most owned wide receiver because there's some potential spots where cheap wide receivers could really get into a ton of my lineups as well. But I'll have a ton of Devontae Adams. I really like Terry McLaurin, especially in Tom Brady lineups. Let's see, he's at 4% projected ownership. Let's go back to sorting by most popular. Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, Amari Cooper, Cole Beasley are the guys over 15% projected ownership so far this week. Godwin will have to monitor. He's questionable. Cooper and Keenan Allen sound like they're going to be good to go. Deontay Johnson's getting a big bump with Claypool out, already adding on to Juju being out. So he should see a lion's share of targets. However, I think I prefer Najee Harris. Now, if Najee Harris is limited or he's out or something, I do think that is a massive bump to Deontay Johnson. I think they go back to throwing the ball a bit more. Yeah, I do think that Deontay Johnson would be a very strong play, especially if Najee's out. Under the 15% guys, Michael Pittman, really like him this week. Jacoby Myers, he's fine. Jarvis Landry, he's okay. Like those are probably two guys that I probably fade at double-digit projected ownership. DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett, Jerry Jeudy are the last few guys over 10%. I think those guys are all pretty good plays. Judy's still only 5.3, so I think that there's still some value there. Metcalf's under 7K. I don't know if the pricing algorithm is accounting for Russell Wilson returning or potentially returning. So that's probably a spot that we're getting a discount on DK Metcalf, despite his role going back to where he has been the past year and a half with Wilson there. So Metcalf's probably one of the stronger plays of the week at wide receiver as well. And it'll be interesting to see if his ownership fluctuates at all once we get official news that that DK or that Russell Wilson's back. So that is something to note. If we get official word that Russell Wilson's officially in, which we'll probably hear, or I shouldn't say probably, but potentially here today, that is interesting to see if the Metcalf ownership will go up. How rare is a rating over 100 for the Opto? So the rating is supposed to change, and it's supposed to keep everybody under 100 every week. So I just didn't get changed this week. That does go to show that he was forcing the Opto to be, or the player rater to be over 100. So obviously he's rating out extremely well. So I wouldn't say it's like extremely rare. We've seen it a couple times, but a lot of times the player rater will automatically force it down. So I have it set to where it's supposed to be in between 0 and 100. But a lot of times it does happen probably, I would say probably once every 3 or 4 weeks, like when we get a really strong play. The Opto or the model's supposed to formulate it down to be under 100, but it just didn't calculate that this week. So I wouldn't say it's super rare, but it does go to show that he was exceeding the original parameters there. So he's a very, very strong play. But all right, let's see here. Under 10%, CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, KJ Osborne, Michael Gallup, who's potentially returning, Adam Thielen, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson. There's some interesting names there. I think some of the most interesting names under 10% are Mike Williams, James Washington, Terry McLaurin. James Washington just has a value play. I also think Tyler Johnson is pretty interesting. If Godwin is out, Tyler Johnson down here not projecting, we'll have to remove Antonio Brown still. The news of him officially being out was came live right before I was going live, but Tyler Johnson's pretty interesting now that Antonio Brown and Gronk have officially been ruled out, and with Godwin potentially expected to miss. I think you can play Johnson in a stack if Godwin plays, but I think he becomes a really strong play if Godwin sits. It'll be interesting to see where his ownership falls, but those are basically some of the top plays that I have a lot of interest in under 10%, with primarily circling around guys like McLaurin, James Washington, Mike Williams in stacks, and then maybe even a little bit of CeeDee Lamb here. Beasley was limited on Friday, but it looks like he's not listed on the injury report. Yeah, okay, so Beasley's going to be 100% good to go, and Zach Moss is going in Sunday with a questionable tag. So, all right, on to tight ends here. Dan Arnold, Kyle Pitts, Pat Freiermuth, Jared Cook, all of the guys over 10% projected ownership. Kyle Pitts is by far my favorite tight end play of the week. He might even be one of my favorite overall plays of the week. I think he's such a strong play. I really like him a lot. I think this is a great game script for him. I think it's not a matchup that I'm concerned about. I'm not really, I don't want to say Kyle Pitts is matchup proof because I don't think that's the case here. But and then I guess there's a little bit of concern here with some of the pass rush that Dallas has been able to get. Maybe they can get to Matt Ryan here, but Kyle Pitts, the role has been so solid for him over the course of since the London game, really. It hasn't really been bad all year, but after the London game, it's just been really strong. Obviously, Calvin Ridley being out really helps him, but when it comes down to a guy with just this pure upside that nobody else on the slate even comes close to matching, I really like him a lot. And he's under 6K still. It's very similar. Kind of reminds me of the George Kittle play from last week. He's not going as overlooked, but I really like the Pitts play, and he correlates really well with a lot of the Dallas guys, in my opinion. So I think that's a good spot to correlate as well. Dan Arnold I like, but I like Pat Freiermuth a lot more, so I would rather find that those extra dollars and get to Freiermuth. Even with Eric Ebron returning, I'm not concerned with that. I think Pat Freiermuth should be the number one tight end now. I think he's definitely earned that. And even if Ebron does play and he is starting, I think that they're going to have to mix in Freiermuth with no Claypool and no Juju. So I think Freiermuth is a very, very good play, even with Ebron returning. Jared Cook, I think he makes sense, but I probably use him in stacks only. Some other, I guess, cheaper or lower owned plays. Noah Fant, I think, makes some sense. It sounds like he's going to be 100% good to go. Dalton Schultz also makes sense. He's a little bit more expensive, so I probably leave him to stacks only as well. But overall, my main focus at tight ends, Kyle Pitts, Pat Freiermuth, and then if I'm looking for a little bit lower owned, guys like Noah Fant or Dalton Schultz. Dan Arnold, I think, is fine, but with the popularity, I probably avoid it. He has been really good, and he has been targeted very heavily. But that's how I feel about tight ends right now. All right, as for defense, don't do player ratings for the defense, just because I don't think that you would get anything helpful out of it. But it looks like the popular defensive plays are the Titans, the Cardinals, and the Eagles as of right now. And then the top point per dollar plays are the Titans, Cardinals, and Panthers. I think the Panthers are a pretty good play, especially, whether or not Kyler Murray plays, just because they're so cheap and they're kind of not getting a ton of ownership. I think the Titans are fine if the ownership comes down, but I really don't like the ownership on them there, with them being the most popular defense. But all right, that is what the popular plays look like. If you guys have any comments on those guys or on those particular players, let me know. We got 15 minutes left in the show, 10 to 15 minutes left. We're going to break down some lineup building stuff. We're going to build out the optimal lineup, see what the optimal lineup looks like, and then we're going to run some stacks. We're going to decipher some of the stacks and how we want to build these lineups here. All right, let's get into it. Optimal lineup time. First of all, got to dislike a couple of these guys here. And let's run the optimal. All right. So the current optimal lineup is shaking out as Josh Allen, D'Ernest Johnson, Cordell Patterson, 2 Dallas wide receivers, Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper, DK Metcalf, Jared Cook, Najee Harris, and the Titans D. So a couple interesting things. It wasn't able to get Devontae Adams in. I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought it would, but it's not surprising to see that they got Najee in there or D'Ernest Johnson, obviously. But Cordell Patterson and DK Metcalf, I think, over Devontae Adams is the shocking part. You can easily drop down a little bit on Patterson and go up to get to Devontae Adams, but overall, not too crazy. I think this is a lineup that makes a good amount of sense here. If you didn't want to roll with 2 Cowboys wide receivers, you can drop down to someone like James Washington or maybe even Tyler Johnson. But again, Michael Gallup is projecting better as of now. So this is the current optimal lineup as of now. If you guys are looking to use the projections of the optimizer, make sure you're checking back on updates throughout the next few hours, and then obviously leading up till Sunday. Fridays are typically filled with tons of projection changes with all the more final injury reports coming out. So make sure you are checking back and updating on those. It should probably be, I'm assuming a lot of people don't build their lineups on Friday and plan to use those lineups on Sunday. I'm sure sometimes a lineup will be built and then changes just aren't really necessary. But for the most part, hopefully you aren't building lineups on Friday and then just forgetting about it, because there is going to be a lot of changes, and that's just something to note. So make sure you're following up on those news and checking in on projection updates as we go on through the week. I want a lot of stack exposure to Tampa Bay and Washington. I think it's a higher scoring game. Would I want to force McKissic in more often than not? I don't know. I'm not in love with McKissic. I guess if you wanted to get to him as a run back, I think that's fine. That's a scenario where we'll run through it right now. That's a scenario where I would want to bump his projection. First of all, let's see where his projection is regularly. I'm at 9.2 right now. In my opinion, that's a perfect spot to bump his projection within the stack. So let's say Tom Brady, good game stack here. Let's say 10 lineups for now. Actually, I think it's set to 1 lineup still. All right, so we'll bump this up to 20 lineups. And we'll say, all right, Tom Brady stack, 10 lineups, no less than 1 player. So for Tom Brady, I actually like to do no less than 2 players and no more than 2. And then for the run backs, no less than 1, probably do no more than 1. So Antonio Brown, 0%. Okay, so Giovanni Bernard, 0. OJ Howard, probably 0. Gronk's out, 0. Cameron Brate, Ronald Jones is 0 for sure. All right, so the way I would approach that is, first of all, it sounds like Logan Thomas isn't going to play. We'll mark him out. Ricky Seals-Jones, I guess, would be interesting if Logan Thomas is officially out, but we're just going to mark all these guys down to 0. All right. Now I'll answer your question. Sorry. So the way I would try to work that is my interest in J.D. McKissic would almost be strictly in stacks, right? Because, I mean, I guess you can use him as a one-off or maybe in like a skinny stack, but theoretically, I probably don't think he has a ton of upside unless it's a game where Tampa Bay also has, a really big scoring game. Like if it's a dud of a game, I don't think he benefits a ton from it. So if I'm looking to only use McKissic in stacks, here's where I would bump his projection up. You can bump it up like 2 points or something. Antonio Gibson will bump it up 1. For Terry McLaurin, we'll bump it up a couple points. So you can bump these projections up within the stack, and they'll only reflect within the stack. So I know I've said this a few times on the show, but in case anybody is new here, if you change projections within this portion of the screen, the projections will only change within the stack. And that's really important because there's plenty of guys that you only want within certain stacks, right? Like you're probably not playing a ton of, I don't know, like Gronk's officially out. You're probably not playing a ton of OJ Howard or Cameron Brate, but you might want to sprinkle them in a little bit in those Tom Brady lineups. So with those being the case, you're able to bump their projections up and say, okay, if Tom Brady is the quarterback or if this is the stack that I'm looking for, that's when we'll bump the projection up. So I think that's pretty interesting, and that's the way I love to approach this. So if I'm ever trying to do that with a player like J.D. McKissic, like you mentioned here, that is how I would treat that. So good question there. So let's build out a stack here. All right. So no less than 2 players. We're going to go with, I don't know. It's kind of hard to decipher the tight end position with OJ Howard and Brate. We'll set him at 10%. I doubt we'll get a ton of them. For Tyler Johnson, I want to bump his projection up a little bit. I'm going to bump it up to 8.9. I actually think it'll be higher with Antonio and Rob Gronkowski officially rolled out, but let's see how that pans out. For Leonard Fournette, we'll set it at 20%. For Godwin, we'll set it at 50. And then for Mike Evans, we'll set it at, I'm trying to do it higher, actually, 70. Now we'll do 60. All right, so this is the current state of our stack. We'd be fine with 100% McLaurin. Actually, we'll knock it down to 80% McLaurin. We'll say 20% Gibson and 20% McKissic. And then I guess 20% Seals-Jones as well. So we're going to run it in tournament mode, 2 uniques, and we'll run this here. A couple other things you can change here if you wanted to. You can force the player under a certain projected ownership, or you can make 0 tight end flex, but I just wanted to run through these stacks here real quick. But all right, as you can see here, we do have some Josh Allen and Dak Prescott lineups. And again, this universal rule up here. So we're running 20 lineups, and we set this rule to only account for 10 lineups. So the Tom Brady rule is only going to account for 10 lineups. And, because obviously if you're building a lot of lineups, you're not going to want to just go all in on somebody most of the time. I mean, from a stacking perspective, you're going to want to get exposure elsewhere. That's why you're building several lineups, right? But with this universal rule, it's going to ensure that no matter what you do, no matter what lineup you build, no matter what quarterback you're using, you're going to stack with at least one pass catcher, a wide receiver, or a tight end from the same team. And then you can include these secondary stacks as well, like running back and wide receiver from the same game or something like that. So let's take a look at the Brady lineups here. So Tom Brady paired with Fournette and Tyler Johnson, brought back with Terry McLaurin. I actually really like that stack there. Tom Brady paired with Tyler Johnson and Leonard Fournette. So as you can see, it does appear like we're going to get a lot of Tyler Johnson because I bumped his projection up to almost 10 points. So bumping his projection up to 10 points is going to make him one of the better point per dollar plays in the slate. So we're going to get a lot of him right now. So keep that in mind. We can bump that down later and see how it reacts. But actually, let's go up here now and do that because I want to see. First of all, we have to probably cap him. Yeah, we have him capped at 100%. So we'll cap him at 20. We'll cap him at 30%. We bumped it up to 9. So we'll bump it up to, we'll say 7.9. And then we'll run it here. So we're hoping that we get some Tyler Johnson because, like I mentioned, I do like Tyler Johnson. But when we're talking about trying to see, okay, I'd probably bump his ownership up a little bit more. But when you're talking about trying to use a value guy like this, it's important to straddle the fence on being high on the guy and not dying on a hill, right? Like Tyler Johnson, I think could be a pretty interesting value play, especially if you're using Tom Brady. But is he a guy that I want to have in every single lineup with Tom Brady? Because the way the optimizer is going to look at it, it doesn't know anything about the situation, right? Like it has a projection, it has some other data, it has the player rate or all that stuff, but it doesn't know like how often Tyler Johnson should be in lineups because of his volatility, right? So it's important to be able to cap that ownership, just because if you have 10 Tom Brady lineups and all 10 of them have Tyler Johnson and Tyler Johnson duds, you're essentially killing all of your Tom Brady lineups. Now, there's plenty of ways where Tom Brady has a big game and Tyler Johnson doesn't. So, and it works the same way for every pass catcher, right? I think there's some scenarios where you go, okay, let's say I'm using Aaron Rodgers, I probably don't ever want to use Aaron Rodgers and not have Devontae Adams there for the most part, right? But for a lot of players, you shouldn't think, okay, if I have 10 lineups with X quarterback, I want all of them with Y wide receiver. Because then if that wide receiver fails, you're essentially killing all of your quarterback lineups with that particular quarterback. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's why these exposures are important to manage here in your stacks. So Tom Brady paired with Evans and Godwin, brought back with Ricky Seals-Jones. Paired with Evans. Okay, this one I'm interested to see because they paired him up, Evans and Godwin, and brought it back with McLaurin. I was curious to see how that would be able to work. And it went with tight end in the flex, which I don't like. I think there's some ways that you could potentially make it work. Like you could potentially find some salary. It has $100 on the board right now, so you could potentially drop down from Najee Harris and then pay up and get someone like, I don't know, James Washington or something. But overall, I was curious to see how this would work. Brady, Evans, Godwin, and McLaurin. Those are 3 expensive receivers and an expensive quarterback. So I was curious to see how that would work. And with Jared Cook in the flex, I don't know if I love that. But again, it looks like we're getting that a lot actually. So you can go 0 tight end in the flex or even 10% tight end in the flex. Whoops, don't want that. So yeah, that's something to monitor when you're building lineups as well. Sometimes it's going to force those tight ends in there in the flex because they provide necessary value in order to make certain stacks work, but it doesn't necessarily account for the ceiling within the entire lineup because it's just saying, okay, we're getting all these top plays in there, we're good. Let's just punt or throw a value spot in the tight end position, but doesn't necessarily know that someone like Jared Cook doesn't have the same kind of upside as a value wide receiver. So that's important to be able to manage there. Let's go back to the Tom Brady lineups here. All right, Fournette paired with Johnson, brought back with McLaurin. Fournette with Johnson, same deal. All right, this one's pretty interesting. Mike Evans paired with O.J. Howard, brought back with McLaurin. Tyler Johnson and Godwin, brought back with McLaurin. Kyle Pitts is in there. Dalvin Cook with Jared Cook. D'Ernest Johnson's in there. I think that's a pretty interesting lineup. All right, here's another one. Okay, so this one does have tight end in the flex. We did lower the cap, not to 0. We did lower it to 10%. Typically, I actually would lower it to 0%, But I can see that we can potentially drop down from the Browns D, save some salary, go to, I don't know, Panthers defense or something like that, and then pay up to someone like James Washington at this flex spot. So that could be an interesting little change right there to that lineup. Evans and Godwin brought back with McLaurin. No Najee Harris, but we have Patterson, Gallup, and Jared Cook. I like that lineup a pretty good amount. Tom Brady, same deal with the two top wide receivers, I guess the three top wide receivers from that game. So yeah, a lot of the stacks are okay. Here's a J.D. McKissic lineup. J.D. McKissic is the bring back with Mike Evans and Godwin. So, and then you can go over here and quickly see the stack allocations as well. And I've also talked about this a few times, but it's just super important to diversify within those stacks. Like, there's a reason why we're building all these lineups, right? It's because a lot of crazy things happen. So if we're building 150 lineups or even 20 lineups, we're doing that in order to be able to capitalize on some of the variants and really diversify to try to get exposure to different places throughout the slate. So that's why it's important to be able to control those exposures, and being able to do it within the stack here and the optimizer is absolutely awesome for NFL. It's awesome. And then you can bump up the projections to ensure that you're going to get more exposure. Really can't beat that in terms of trying to build within a stack. But so that is how I'm looking to build a couple of stacks here for the week 10. Yeah, week 10. I'm getting all the weeks mixed up now. For the week 10 slate. Love the McKissic bring back. That stack resembles the perfect Tampa blowout. Yeah, that's true. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, McKissic can definitely get there in like 6 or 7 catches or something like that. So I don't hate it. Let's see if we can find that lineup again. We do have McKissic in 2 lineups, both with Godwin and Evans. Yeah, I don't mind this lineup here, actually. I don't really love this one with Jakobi Meyers, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, so that's a couple things that I'm looking to do this week. All right, so we got about 2-3 minutes left here. Then we're going to hop out of here. I got some NBA stuff that I got to get done here, but we're going to run through the NBA first look real quick. Nothing too in-depth, but we're going to take a look at some of the top projected plays and top values from the NBA slate. Just kind of tease the optimizer here. The optimizer's been working really well for me lately. Let's look at FanDuel. I believe everything's uploaded in FanDuel. Yep. All right. So the optimizer's been working great for me lately. Had 2 pretty solid nights in a row. Well, last night didn't end up that great, but we were up there at the top at the end, and then we dropped. But that's all you can ask for is to have a chance, right? So I do want to touch on this because I do think people should definitely be on board with the NBA MME. I had a couple of people DMing me about MME on FanDuel or on DraftKings or just in the NBA in general. And some people are intimidated by MME because it is, especially if you're doing that for NFL. Like, I just did one stack. We took 15, 20 minutes to talk about the Tampa Bay stack. So when you're thinking about that, if you're doing, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 different stacks in NFL, it gets pretty overwhelming. It's nice that we have the entire week to do it. Or I guess if you can probably start on like Friday and you have 3 days to do it. It can get pretty intimidating. MLB, I think, is a little bit easier because you don't necessarily need to go into as fine of detail. But NBA, there are some rules that you're definitely wanting to set and think about, but it's definitely not as rule heavy as a sport like NFL or MLB. So if you're interested in getting started in MMAing, I think NBA is a great place to do it. It's very projection. It's a very projection-based sport, and it really helps to have strong projections. And I think the projections have been really good this year. So keep that in mind going forward. If you're looking to try out MMAing, I think doing so in NBA is a great place to start. But top point per dollar plays of the night so far: JaVale McGee, Patrick Beverley, Mason Plumlee, Robert Williams, and Lou Dort. Again, this is on FanDuel, so make sure you're checking on DraftKings if you're looking to play over there. Most popular plays: Josh Giddey, Mikal Bridges, Darius Garland, Robert Williams, and Bobby Portis in the top 5. Top projected overall plays: Giannis, Jokic, AD, Luka, and Steph. And the top players with the highest ceiling: Nikola Jokic returning from suspension. That wasn't pretty, but hopefully he will keep his cool going forward. Jokic, Giannis, AD, Russell Westbrook, and Luka. Those are the top 5 in terms of ceiling. So that's going to do it for the show. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Again, if you're interested in getting involved in some FTN bet stuff, the bet tracker, the prop betting for NBA has gone pretty good for me. I got to a really bad start, but I'm up like 11 units so far this week, and I've done two free articles the last 2 days on FTN Bets, and they went 6 for 7 in terms of the picks on those hitting. And I believe in the last like 15 prop bets or something in the bet tracker for me, I think I'm like 13 for 15. So we're getting into a little bit of a rhythm here. So if you're interested in getting in on the FTN Bets side of things, hop over to FTNBets.com, use promo code KMUR to get yourself 20% off. When you subscribe over there, you get every single sport. So if you want to be there for NFL, you get NBA, you get NHL, who Chris Meany's up like 1 million units over there. He's absolutely crushing it. But you get every sport. You get all the college sports. Every sport that we do picks for, you get access to with one package. So make sure you're checking that out. We'll see you guys not tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. I won't be here. But tomorrow I believe we have an NBA stream. I'm not on that, but I'm on the Sunday NFL stream. So I will see you guys Sunday morning on that stream, and I will see you Monday back with the Optimal Show. Hope you all have a great weekend. Hope you have a great week 10 of the NFL, and we will see you on Monday.